The following conversation is with Dr. Dorothy Martin-Neville, a pioneer in integrative healthcare, visionary leadership coach and speaker who has transformed countless lives through her work. Dorothy's story is one of resilience, growing up in an orphanage and overcoming tremendous challenges to become a leader who inspires others to embrace their potential. This is Pre-Zero Sports Talk podcast, and I'm your host, Sid Bensalah. Today, we're diving into Dorothy's incredible journey and exploring what it means to lead with purpose, adapt to change, and build a legacy. Let's jump right in. Welcome to the show, Dorothy.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Your journey from growing up in an orphanage to become a transformative leader is extraordinary. What motivated you to step into this role as a leader, coach, and speaker?
Many things. I don't know that I necessarily woke up one day and said, gee, I'm going to be a leader and a speaker. Life evolves step by step. We go through things and we end up in places we say, this is amazing. I don't know how I got here. What I did is I was divorced and my children were very, very young, kindergarten and fourth grade. And I needed to support us. And I went out and got my master's and became a psychotherapist. I had been a social worker and moved into therapy. And with that, a few years in, I was blessed with that. I spoke everywhere. I knew people are not going to come to you if they don't even know you exist. So we have to let the world know we're here in order to be able to serve the way we want to serve, especially at a level we want to serve at. And I went out and spoke to every women's group, church group, synagogue, every place that I could go that would allow me in to speak. I did. And eventually, 3 months later, I had 42 patients a week I was seeing for over 20 years. And even if the folks who attended a talk didn't come, they had friends who would say, I need a therapist, and they would refer me. And so I was blessed with a waiting list that lasted most of my career. And what ended up happening is a few years in, I started noticing patterns that certain personalities were coming in with particular diseases as well, physiological diseases. And certain personalities were developing breast cancer. Certain personalities had kidney disorders and so forth. And when none of my friends who were specialists in the medical world could understand that, they said it's coincidental. And yet I was predicting it. I knew coincidence was not the reality. So I went and explored and became certified in 9 modalities of integrative health through acupressure, iridology, reflexology, and so forth. Combined it and put it together to create my own approach to working with these clients. And before I knew it, people on my waiting list were asking to work with me for me to educate them before they had a chance to see me privately. And before you knew it, I was offering classes and they ended up becoming a 4-year school in integrative health, and not trying to be a pioneer. One of my students was the head of cardiology at a hospital here, the hospital wanted to develop an integrative health department and asked if I would join with the hospital to create this. And I worked with the head of their medical interns from the medical school with my interns, and we created a team approach to healthcare. And I realized later we were the only 4-year school in energy medicine in the country that required 2 years of medical internships for the advanced students. And then I had students flying in from all over the country, in Canada and Australia and other places to study with me, and realized, wow, I never had this big a vision or this big an idea. I was just teaching what I knew to people on my waiting list, and it evolved. And what it taught me was that it had started out as me, and by the end, there was $1 million payroll. And I thought, if we aren't aware of where our dreams are taking us, the dreams lead, we don't. And I ended up on the job needing to learn how to lead full-time employees, how to lead piles of 1099s, part-time workers, contractors. And all of a sudden, I realized I thought of myself simply as a woman who had some businesses. I did not think of myself as a businesswoman. And there's a hugely different connotation in that. And, so when it dawned on me, and it didn't really dawn on me, to be honest, it was other people saying to me, "You're quite the businesswoman." And I'm thinking, "Oh my God, I really am. I really am a businesswoman. What a surprise that is." And then it's like, okay, I've got to sit up a little taller. I've got to own this and become that businesswoman in my own mind's eye, because you see yourself differently. You see your place in the world differently. You put different expectations on yourself when you're not just some chick hanging out with a few companies, but you're a businesswoman. It's a very different sense of self. And then I realized how many others had not had that recognition. For some reason, I'm pretty insightful, and I realized so many others weren't. And so I thought, how can I help them achieve this level of realization I've achieved? And before you knew it, I was seeing, perhaps because at that point I had a PhD, I'd become a psychologist, and I was recognizing there's so many things people who are out there leading companies don't see, they don't recognize in themselves. They don't recognize the defenses they're putting up. They don't recognize the stories they're telling themselves. They think this is a truth when in fact it's a story. That's holding them back from the level of success they want to achieve. And because I had owned that place as a businesswoman, I now had permission for myself, if you will, to see things
Yeah.
differently and to see other leaders differently. And it
Yeah.
evolves.
Yeah. What a fantastic journey. And Dorothy, how
Mm.
did those early experiences shape your views on resilience and leadership?
Quite a bit, quite a bit. Growing up in the housing projects, alcoholism is an issue, or a drug addiction is an issue for many living in the house. Not everybody, but for many living in the housing projects. And what I would see in the morning is, with addiction, there's usually physical violence. So what I would see in the morning was, outside of all of our buildings, there's a front stoop. There's like 5 or 6 steps that many young mothers sit on while their children play. There's lots of kids, and lots of young women out there who this is
Yeah.
their life. And even as a child, I thought, some of us just come in with a level of wisdom, perhaps from another journey, but we come in with a level of wisdom that I was looking at these women and thought, they need to know that they have choices. They don't have to live in such a violent relationship. They don't have to live in such a horrific situation. I want to help them. When I get older, I want to help them to know that they don't have to do this. And it just was a thought I had. And I just had that realization that when I'm older, I want to support women like this not having to do this. And at the same time, as I went and aged, I began to see the men were also very unhappy. And they were not who they wanted to be either. That all of these people were really suffering. And it just, we all do this. I think perhaps because I didn't grow up initially in a family. I grew up outside a family, and then I lived outside on the streets for a few years, even after I was adopted, before I could live in the apartment. That I think there was an objectivity I was able to see that others don't really get when they are protected and kept in a nice, warm, loving
Right.
environment. So there was an objectivity I could develop and see that they need help. They need help. And how can I do that? The men need help. The women need help. And how can I do that? I had no understanding. I never knew a woman who'd been to college, so I didn't know that you go to college and you get educated and you have greater depth of understanding and better training. I just knew somehow I wanted to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah. And leadership can mean different things to different people. In your view,
Mhm.
what are the main qualities of truly great leader today?
A truly great leader, one, owns the fact that they are a leader. Has to own I think when we don't own it, we don't have anywhere near the impact. I literally believe every one of us is called to leadership. Now, for some, that's leadership of their own lives, and where I consciously make decisions as to where I want to go, what I want to do, what is my purpose, what is it that fills my heart, that fills me with joy, that fills me with meaning so that I know I'm where I belong. I know I'm doing what I'm meant to do. That takes a lot of introspection. And leaders, effective leaders, have the gift of that type of introspection. They have the ability to bring their passion that's authentic into their lives. They have, and it doesn't matter what that focus is. We're all here with different skills. We're all here with a different purpose. But there's a realization that this is what I'm called to do. And it doesn't matter if what you're called to do is to be dog commissioner, in your local town, or it's to be president of a country or president of a company. There's no leader is better than another in a sense of purpose or
just
meaning.
a parent.
Or just a parent. That's as a mom, I can tell you that, being a parent is a leadership position, because more than once you're thinking, I don't think I want this job. I've just changed my mind. I don't like this. This isn't the vision I had of children adoring me. Is it not what I'm getting when they all know I'm dumb and I don't know anything? Yes. And because even as a parent, you can acquiesce your leadership and say, this is too much work. Go where you want to go. Do what you want to do. Put your life in danger. I don't care. I'm exhausted. You have to take that deep breath and stand up and claim, hey, wait a minute, I am the parent here. There's constantly choosing to become the leader you are because of the choices you made. And it is a conscious decision, because any leader that is honest is going to tell you they had the idea of, I'm running away and I'm not coming back, and you can't make me do this. It's okay to get that. And that's the thing, is it's okay to get that urge. It's okay to have that desire. It's not necessarily okay to do it immediately, but it's okay to have those urges. Welcome to humanity. But an effective leader, I truly believe, follows what they're here to do. They don't do a job because it's making money. They don't do a job because it makes them important. They do a job because it allows them to really live a dream, a vision they have, and make the world a better place, make themselves a better person, a more expanded, more powerful, more impactful.
Dorothy, specifically on that, how has your definition of leadership evolved over the years? Can you share a story of, let's say, a leader who deeply inspired you?
Golly, there are many. Initially, when I was very young, my thought of leadership was just, I'm in charge. I'm going to be the one that makes all the decisions. And then as I grew as a leader, I realized I don't want to make all the decisions, and I shouldn't. I need input. And one of my companies that had a large number of employees, every Wednesday we would get together and I'd let them know what my thoughts are for the week, or for this program we're developing, or for what we're doing, and then ask for completely honest feedback, because each of them would be seeing the same thing I'm looking at from a different perspective. And they could expand my ideas or redirect my ideas or support me in a way one brain can't do. All of these other minds were really helping make this product a far better representation of what I wanted to do, and realized that no, leadership isn't being in charge of making all the decisions. It's really pulling the best out of everybody and letting them know they can disagree with me, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Calling them to be their best selves. And I really saw that leadership is calling everybody on my team to be their best, most powerful self, and having the courage, the strength, and the creativity to make our vision for this company bigger and better than I ever could have done on my own. And it really showed me the importance of my own personal growth and emotional intelligence, my own growth in my own spiritual development, my own growth as a leader, and feeling comfortable knowing I'm going to be corrected, I'm going to be redirected, I'm going to be expanded. They're going to ask more of me than I thought I needed to give, and grow into that, and really see this not as a critical challenge, but as an important challenge to keep growing and expanding and becoming better and better as a leader, and better as a person.
Yeah. You've been called a pioneer in integrative healthcare. What does being a pioneer demand of a leader?
A willingness to stand out. A willingness to stand out. When I initially started my school, People would say to me, but you're so extremely intelligent. Why are you getting involved in something that is so ridiculously out of the box? Why are you getting involved in something nobody gives
What do you
credibility
mean
to?
by something
Uh,
completely out of the box? Is it a lack of recognition in that industry, or?
Well, yeah, because people did not believe a pioneer is bringing a new idea
Yeah.
to fruition. A pioneer is expanding what already
Mm.
exists, or is bringing a whole new
Hmm.
perspective to what
Hmm.
already exists. So a pioneer is asking others to let go of what they think is normal and grow into something more. And when you ask people to grow and expand and look at things differently, you're asking them to step out of what is currently absolutely
Hmm.
acceptable. That puts them at risk of being
Yeah.
judged, at risk of
Yeah.
being criticized, at risk of being
Mm.
ridiculed,
Yeah.
and losing respect. There are people who, at one point when I was teaching in grad school, thought I was extremely intelligent and capable, and look at how important she is. And then, oh no, she's gone off the deep end. She's lost it now. She's something happened over there. She's not who she used to be. And I'm thinking, thank God I'm not who I used to be. And they're thinking it's so sad she's not who she used to be. All right. So very different
Yeah.
opinions of what happens when we start doing the thing that's not the
Yeah.
norm. Uh, People get
Yeah.
comfortable, and a pioneer makes some people
Yeah.
uncomfortable. What he or she also does is give other
Mm.
people permission
Yeah.
to be pioneers
Yeah.
themselves. And to me, that's an effective leader. It's giving
Hmm.
you permission to be your best self. And if you're called to be a pioneer in some industry, go for it. If it's a pioneer in the industry I'm in, go for it. Well, together we can take this industry
Mm.
even further. But it means you have to be willing to be
Yeah.
ridiculed. You need to be willing
Yeah.
to be judged.
And, and for many leaders, there is this fear of what's next. There is this fear of change or embracing
Mm,
change. So, for leaders facing
right.
significant, let's say, transitions, what advice would you offer, Dorothy?
Let go of other people's expectations of who you
Hmm.
should be and what you
Right.
should do. I mean, that is the biggest. I do this frequently with my clients because I work with a lot of folks who are in transition. Some are creating a legacy, some are reframing how they see their job, how they see their company. And it really is, let's let go of the way it used to be. Because if the way it used to be contains you, you're never going to continue. A rose doesn't
No.
stop growing. A rose continues to
Yeah.
blossom,
Yeah.
right?
No, that's a fantastic advice. But then you are in this situation where, again, uh, let's say the majority, they are comfortable. They're a little bit skeptic about embracing a new, let's say, technology, for example, AI, or taking the next step. When you confront fear or resistance, for example, in uncharted territories, how do you navigate that?
Well, I start with, what if you stayed the same? What if you played it safe?
Mhm.
How would that feel
But
to
then they
you?
are in this comfort zone and they don't want to let go of that.
Right. But they would not be ready or talking to me about growth and change
Mm.
if something in them wasn't calling them for more, if something in them wasn't calling them to elevate.
Mhm.
And that's where transition becomes difficult. Transition becomes difficult because there's a part of you that's calling you to greater. There's a part of you that's calling you to change, to shift, to grow, to do something differently. And there's another part of you that's saying, no, pretend you don't hear that. Pretend you're not
Mm.
being pulled. Pretend everything's okay the way it is. And what happens is that once that starts, it's like something in you grows. Once it starts growing, it becomes an irritant if you don't follow it. You become more and more dissatisfied with where you are while you're holding on tighter and tighter to the safety of
Mm.
what was. And then you start have your own inner conflict, your own inner battle. And you know you're called to something more. that it isn't should I, it's I'm terrified. And now I'm in an inner battle myself with I don't want to do this. And eventually you realize if I don't, I'm getting angrier at more things. I'm reacting to more things. I'm not responding any longer because I'm not happy within myself. And it's more and more I'm being called to something different. And inner peace is only going to come
Yeah. Yeah.
when you follow that. And unfortunately, I've worked with people who have spent 5 years trying to fight that need to grow, and some do it instantly, and that's the gift. When you grow frequently, when you become a pioneer, if you will, frequently, you realize the road of least resistance is just to follow it, just to go with it, right?
Yeah.
But when it's a new thing for you, you get in your own inner battle, but then you start taking it out in your relationships. You start taking it out in your work because you're not comfortable within yourself. So as I point out to them, all right, then let's not, actually a client just the other day, she said, I realized it was going to be this difficult. I thought it would be easy. I was so extremely successful over here. I thought it would be easy to be successful here. And this is work. I don't know that I want to do it. I said, okay, then let's give it up. Let's not help you grow to where you want it to go. Let's throw that dream out the window and let's just stand still. What will that be like for you if you stand still right now? That's a stupid idea. Well, you told me you didn't want to do this anymore. This is too much work. So let's just throw it out the window and you can stay still. And there was a few moments of silence until she said, I really don't have a choice. At this point, I know I can't stay still anymore. I said, okay, then let's look at why this is difficult. Let's look at what's getting in the way. What are the belief systems that are showing up for you? What are your expectations? Because the reality isn't the same as your expectations. Let's deal with that because that's where the issue is. Then it's like, oh, well, then this is solvable. Yes, it is solvable.
Yeah.
If we look at it, it's solvable.
Yeah. Let's talk about the leadership styles. Balancing empathy with accountability is a common challenge for leaders. How do you approach that balance, Dorothy?
And we need both. We need both. But see, you can hold somebody accountable and be empathic. There's a real confusion, I think, in much of leadership that if I hold you accountable, I'm an attack dog. I'm going to go after you to make sure that I'm holding you accountable for what you're doing, for your decisions. I'm going to let you have it if you fail. What if we were powerful and not aggressive? What if confrontation wasn't the same as conflict? And what if confrontation never created conflict? What if confrontation simply was, I'm pointing out to you the ways in which you're lying to yourself? What if holding you accountable to be who you really are means I'm here to remind you that you're choosing victim and powerless versus powerful and unlimited? What if, in holding you accountable, I allow you to see that you made a decision based on what you know is your new truth? And I can point out to you all the ways in which you're starting to lie to yourself in order to play safe. And if I can support you doing that, I am and with a great deal of empathy, recognizing, because I've been through it myself, the decision to play it safe versus grow, that we go so far and then we want to stop. So what if I hold you accountable for the decisions you've made and know that you made them? You've got to live up to those decisions. You've been called to make a decision that takes you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I understand that part of you wants to run back to comfort at times. And I understand that. Because I understand that, I'm not going to judge you. But I'm also not going to agree that it's okay to run back and pretend. So the accountability comes from a place of unconditional love. It doesn't come from a place of judgment. There's a huge difference in that.
Time.
Yeah.
Going back to the example with the client you mentioned earlier, Is adaptability something we are born with, or it can be learned?
I believe we're all born
Mhm.
with it, but we don't all recognize it.
So it's an inner quality that we need to discover. In
Right,
Okay.
right. If it hasn't been developed already, it's a quality within you. Notice that when someone calls you, well, even starting this
Hmm.
podcast, you know, you may not have been that visible before or taken that risk
Hmm.
before, such what felt like a huge, because frequently when we take a risk, it feels huge. When we're on the other side of it, we say, it really wasn't all that big a
Hmm.
risk, but it felt massive before we took it,
Yeah.
right? And so when you get there on the other side, it feels like this is so
Yeah.
natural because what you did, this is who you've always
Mm.
been. You just gave yourself permission to own a part of you that you hadn't owned
Hmm.
previously,
Yeah.
right? So to me, our dreams, our visions are really our soul or our essence, whatever the word is, it's irrelevant to me. It's our connecting with who we truly are. Our dream calls us to become who we're meant to be,
Hmm.
who we have skill, what we have skills for already. We may refine those skills. We may develop them in a more elegant way,
Hmm.
perhaps a more um, smoother, clarifying way, but they're already there. They're already there. I'm not feeling the least bit of a calling to become a brain surgeon. That's not who I am. It's not what I'm called
Yeah.
for, right? So I don't need to develop the skills of a brain surgeon. But when I want to do this, I'm called. Clients challenge me
Yeah.
to grow. They challenge me to deal with different issues I haven't had to look at. Because when we take risks, we're calling out more and more skills that are natural to
Mm.
us. And we can't decide I'm only going to grow this much. It doesn't really
Yeah.
work that way.
Yeah. Let's shift gear a little bit and talk about other topics. Stress is inevitable for leaders, but it can also hinder effectiveness. What are your top strategies for managing stress in leadership?
Stepping away, stepping away. When we are highly stressful, we've moved into a mindset that has us in conflict. It has us in battle with everything going on
Hmm.
around us. I'm trying to control everything around me. I'm trying to take charge of everything. There's too many balls in the air. I'm trying to do it all and I can't do it. And so we start going into survival mode. And when we're in survival mode, we've lost all connection to creativity. When we're in survival mode, we've lost all ability to respond. We're now in reactionary mode. So to me, it is either separate, go in the bathroom for 15 minutes, go get a cup of tea. Sometimes it's
Hmm.
take a
Take
day
a
off,
break.
take a
Yeah.
break, whatever it is that you need to do. And it may be, you know what, I know I've got all these balls in the air, and right now it feels like I've got a crisis everywhere, but I need to go away for the
Hmm.
weekend.
Yeah.
I need to step away completely and go to the theater or go hiking, do whatever it is that appeals to you, to step out of this
Mm.
reality
Mm.
and do something else. Sometimes it's watching a movie. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what it is because you come back with a very different perspective. You come back with a different view because you got lost in a different
Mm.
world. And then because you come back, it's now you can see it more clearly because you're not caught in a tunnel. You're not caught in this survival mode. You're coming back
Yeah.
from a different place and you see it far
Hmm.
more
Hmm.
clearly.
Because there is this myth, Dorothy, that if you want to become a CEO, decision maker, a leader, a president, you name it, you need to be available 24/7. And that's the cost. Or put it this way, that's the price. And I keep hearing the same thing on and on in various mediums, podcasts, and stuff like that. And then the first question is, hang on a little bit. These leaders, these decision makers are humans, you know? And
Mhm.
as you said quite well, you need to take a break. You need to force yourself to have quality times with yourself or with your loved ones, you know? So, yeah, yeah. Interesting. Sorry.
And yeah, I think that the setup is when we believe we have to be available 24/7. I don't accept that. I believe that we have to be willing to deal with what happens always. However, if I'm taking 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever time it is for you, I'm stopping at 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock every evening. I'm stepping away. I'm doing my family or I'm doing friends, whatever, wherever we are in our lives. I'm stepping away from work. Now, we know that we can train people that everything that happens is a crisis. Or we can train people that we have small problems and we have big problems. And if I step away for 3 hours and I've trained people to handle things, at 10 o'clock when I come back for a half an hour or an hour, and I will deal with whatever needs to be dealt with. And then I need my own time to sleep. I need my own time perhaps to get up and work out in the morning or to do breakfast, whatever it may be. And then I come in with the illusion that the world will not exist if I am not serving 24/7. I've created an illusion of my own importance. And then I cannot serve well.
Yeah, yeah. Dorothy, have you dealt in the past or present with individuals, leaders that suffers from burnout?
Oh, yes.
And what's your
Oh, yes.
approach, Dorothy, in terms of getting them through, let's say, not to talk too much about the past and looking for the present and future?
What I do when they reach me at burnout is my first question is always, who did you think you were supposed to be in that situation? All right. And frequently they thought they were supposed to be the one main problem solver. They were supposed to be the one that could handle everything, to do everything for everybody. And we start with that because that's a fallacy. It's like, where did you learn that belief about who you were supposed to be? Because when you were so focused on being everything for everybody and handling everything, you stopped being present. When our story runs our life, we are no longer in our life. And that's a really important point, that when we are living our story, we are not living us. And when I begin with that, what's the story that told you you were supposed to be all things to everybody?
Yeah.
And when they realize that, then I will go back to, at this moment in time, I'm not asking you to do a thing because you don't have 1 ounce of energy available. But if you were going to do something that brought joy to your life, what would that look like? And it's funny because they'll say to me, at this point, I don't have a clue. Okay. But if you were to have a clue, what do you think that would be? And then all of a sudden they can tell me. Why the difference? When I ask them, they go to their head. If there was something you could do now that you would love doing, what would it be? I don't know, because there's a belief that I have to go get up and do this right now. This moment I know what that is. But when they tell me I don't have it, it's basically what they're saying is I don't even have the energy to do what I would like to do. Okay, then let's take your need to do it away. If you knew what it was, though, what do you think it would be? Because all of a sudden now there's no expectation they do anything with it. Then I hear, I'd love to go on a sailing trip. I'd love to go to my kid's soccer game. Okay. You don't have to do it, but it's nice to know what you would do if you were to do something. And it's all of a sudden, there's like a crack in the foundation. There's a crack in the cement that has them stuck in the burnout. Because they begin to see that there is the ability for light. There is the ability to come out from under. Even if we don't do it today, there is the ability to come out from under. There is life other than that tight container they have put themselves in, that they lost sight of everything but that tight container.
Yeah. It's fascinating. It's exactly the same situation we deal with athletes that face burnout. Exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about subject that is dear to me, women in leadership. What are the biggest challenges women leaders face today, and how do we address those challenges, Dorothy?
Sadly, one of the biggest problems we have is we are frequently not given the credibility that we deserve. We're not seen as capable. We're not seen as, we have women in boardrooms who are almost pacified. You're in the boardroom because they need a woman in the boardroom, but we really don't expect any intelligent contributions from you. So we'll let you speak on occasion, when the decisions are already made. And what ends up happening is that frequently women will stay there feeling frustrated. And I will hear from them later that they are disgusted at the lack of respect, at the lack of credibility. And when I say, and so how did you deal with it? And they start to slump. I had a client once say to me, she was at this meeting, and two of them showed up early for the meeting. Herself and a man showed up early for this board meeting. I mean, 5 minutes, but they showed up a little bit early for the meeting. And she was outside the boardroom and sharing with him some ideas she had. And they went into the meeting, and when they were all talking, the man presented her ideas as if they were his. And she started to sink down in the chair and getting more and more angry and more powerless and feeling lost and just enraged at the castration basically that took place. And she said as she was sitting there, she saw my face come in the door and like, what would Dr. D do? And she sat up and she just said, Jim, what you said was terrific when I shared that with you. You forgot the key point. The key point that I wanted to make in all of that was this. And all of a sudden, everybody looked and could see darn well that this was her idea. And they saw, because she was willing to speak up, she knew if she took him on, she would just be an emotional reactionary woman. And if she didn't take him on, she would again be stripped of what was her awareness, her knowledge, her contribution. So she had to do it in such a way that her power and her intelligence was presented, but not in a confrontational way, not in an argumentative way, and not as a victim fighting to be seen, but in a powerful way. And by standing up really and presenting herself with power, but without aggression, she could be heard. And that becomes a tool that many women need to learn how to do, how to stand up and be powerful without being aggressive, but also expecting to be seen rather than expecting to be invisible. And another way that I see women sabotaging themselves, I've actually written a book on this, is that women get caught in the need to be nice. They get caught in the need to be kind to everybody. And they interpret what kind looks like. And they end up sabotaging themselves. They sabotage their leadership. And when they're the owner, they can sabotage their company. That this person isn't doing a good job, but I know they're going through a hard time personally, and I don't want to add to their stress. Well, add to their stress, all right? Call them in the office. You don't need, again, this is about accountability. We spoke about a few moments ago, that call them in the office and you can let them know, hey, too much stuff is falling through the cracks. We need to talk about this. How can I help you do your job without things falling through the cracks? I know you're going through a difficult period. It could be a very seriously ill child. It could be a divorce they're in the process of, whatever is going on. How can we help you? Because I can't allow you to let so much continue through the cracks. What do we need to do here? And often women feel uncomfortable as leaders calling somebody out, doing something that needs to be done for the betterment of the company. But again, you can do that when you don't need to be nice. You can be real.
Yeah.
Because being nice oftentimes doesn't allow you to be real, doesn't allow you to deal with situations that need to be dealt with. And you don't have to be cruel, but you have to be real and powerful. And I've seen it with women who are heads of hospitals. I've seen it with women who are just starting out in the industry, whatever their industry is, that it doesn't matter the level. It becomes a saboteur when they are caught in the need to be nice, because that means being a good girl.
Yeah.
And we can't be good girls. We need to be real women. There's a big difference.
A big difference, yeah. And how do we empower more women to step into leadership role with confidence?
It's through training, through coaching or training in either. You can provide a coach who has already confronted that and dealt with that herself or himself, or you can do training on what effective leadership looks like and deal with what and to me, an effective training program is, let's say I've got 2 hours, is 1 hour of offering information, offering content, and 1 hour of looking at what are their situations. And I'm not saying 1 hour, then 1 hour, it can be all intermittent, but what's a particular specific situation they're dealing with? And how can we brainstorm around that? What can we do with that? How can I support you in dealing with that? And because frequently they're looking at it one way. What if we looked at it these other different ways? What if we looked at it from perspectives you haven't seen? And sometimes it's lack of experience. Sometimes it's inability to stand up and make that decision. And how do we train them? How do we help them deal with specifics, not just generalizations and concepts, giving them real concrete tools to deal with a specific situation? Because they don't have necessarily the old boys club where they can go to somebody that will give them information. Some are blessed with wonderful men or women who have walked before them, who are more than willing to share their experience, but not everybody is. Not everybody has that opportunity.
But there is another issue that we talk about less and less. The past 10 years, the strategy was to get as many women as possible within a leadership role in the sports industry. Then they get all the training, and most of them, either they were, let's say, former top athletes, and they transition through trainings and stuff like that. The minute they are selected to a key position on merit, not based on gender, what we see, Dorothy, and we try to not talk about it, it's this gender parity which remains significantly a challenge in leadership, especially in my industry. From unequal pay to underrepresentation in top roles, etc., etc. And in one hand, we claim we are doing the right thing, but on the other hand, we say, okay, why can we not pay that top executive, that lady, the same as that male executive? Is it a mentality? Is it a culture thing? Is it what is it?
It's very much a cultural thing. The culture creates the mentality, right? And if we're going to change the culture, we again need to be those pioneers. We need to step out of the box. In order to change culture, we have to be willing to step out of the box and do something that we know is going to be judged, that we know is going to have appalling positions. Somebody's going to be absolutely for it, and somebody's going to be absolutely against it. That what ends up happening is that it's not reasons why women shouldn't be paid the same as excuses. And we have seen in different sports that basketball, women used to have fewer and fewer viewers on TV. And now all of a sudden, more people are watching some women basketball games than they're watching male basketball games online, on TV. So it's like, no, when we promote it, when we put it out there, because it's novel, if you will, because it's more women are saying, I want to support this, but also men saying, this is intriguing to watch the differences in how women play and men play and all of this. Let's do this. And now they're bringing in the money. They're bringing in the advertisers. They're bringing
The
in the
audience.
interest. They're bringing in the following, right? And the media is following them. So when they had the opportunity, they could take it and run with it. And yet equal pay still is not there. When we have a history of not paying equally, and initially, and I remember many, many years ago, when I was an officer in a company or coming in for a potential position as an officer in a company, and my husband was not an officer and he was making more money than me. And when I asked what that was about, well, a man needs to support his family. A woman just works. Well, there's not a whole lot of logic to that because a whole lot of women are supporting their
Absolutely.
family, and single mothers are massively high in numbers, right? And even if she's not supporting a family, even if she's a single woman, she still is doing the same job, deserves the same amount of money. Where her money is going is irrelevant. Where his money is going is irrelevant. But initially it was, we don't know what to do with this. And so as time goes on, we're still fighting an old, very old belief system. I think on one level that men have more financial responsibilities than women do, which facts always destroy belief systems, right? And so now we're here, and if we're doing an equal job and we're even bringing in more following, we're doing a better job at running a particular department or a company. Why not the same compensation? Because they've been able to get away with it. People don't give away power unless they have to. People don't give away money unless
But
they have
why
to.
we are not willing to change? I mean, 2025, and we're still talking about gender parity. It's what it has to happen to have that equal pay. Again, based on merit, because women, they clock the same timing, the same effort, the same energy. They put the hard work on top of raising a family, etc., etc. So it's a there is a case. There is many cases here in Sweden where the head of a corporation, a company, is a woman. And you think that by having a woman at the top of the pyramid will basically create this kind of change, that every single woman within that company will have the same equal pay as them. It's not the case. It's definitely not the case.
No, again, because they've gotten away with it. Because, and I don't mean to make men evil and
No,
horrible,
absolutely
but
not.
it's just a pattern. It's a culture that they have gotten away with. And because they don't have to pay that money, they've been able not to have to pay that money. Why should they? And as more women start demanding and expecting, there's also when women, and we know this through research, when women are up looking at a position, they are not very good negotiators for themselves. They have to, a man will be offered a certain amount of money and try to negotiate. Women tend not to negotiate. They tend to be grateful for the money. And so they don't negotiate for higher salaries. So there are women I know in New York City, their whole coaching position is teaching women how to ask for greater salaries, teaching women how to negotiate, because it's not something that women have been trained to do. Again, is it too aggressive? Will they not give it to me? Will they ridicule me? Will I not get the position because I asked for too much money? Whereas men are more prone, they're more conditioned to asking for greater. So there's two different ways to look at this. One is we've got to train women to expect more and go after more. That's one piece. And the other is training the culture, shifting the culture to equal pay for equal positions, equal power, equal impact, equal influence. So there's two different elements I think we need to look at, this and this. But folks are companies, organizations, whatever it may be, are going to give less if they've always been giving less, unless something calls them to make a difference.
Well, on a positive note, a couple of years ago, I think 2 years ago, for the first time in the history of the sports industry, the US soccer national team managed to convince the governing body in the United States to basically vote for equal pay, men and women, and they managed to do that. And it was the first time I think 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. So that was quite.
But notice the word you just said. They convinced them. Why did they even have to convince them? Why wasn't it just a given?
They
Why did
convinced
have to
them.
convince
It's been a battle for many years. Even apparently, they even came to a point where they said, okay, if we don't get what we are asking for, then we're going to boycott XYZ,
Right.
the entire team. And the federation, the governing body, they had no choice. Just to, it went to a vote during their annual general assembly, and it was approved.
Good. But notice what they had to go through to make that happen. We're back into cultural change. That why did they have to force them into this? Why wasn't it just naturally given?
Yeah.
Because now we're trying to change a culture. And yes, if we can do this with soccer, can we do this with basketball? Can we do this with baseball? Can we do this with employment? Can we do this? And we're shifting a culture. And it isn't just the American culture. We're shifting
And shifting culture, can culture be triggered or, let's say, stimulated by some kind or type of government regulation or?
Governments can try to force it. I mean, there's been many lawsuits that have gone on here in the States about unequal pay. There's been many lawsuits that have taken place against companies, against whatever, all right? The fact that it takes a lawsuit to make it happen says
It's extreme.
People are saying, you can't make me change.
Yeah.
You can't force us. And so when it's done by force, it's done with resentment. Now, over a period of time, it becomes the new norm. But you have to be willing to deal with, it's going to be resentment initially. It's going to be anger initially. They're going to feel resentment initially. And after a while, it becomes the norm. So we have to be willing to be unliked. We have to be willing to have people angry at us. We have to be willing to deal with the ramifications of insisting on something. And sometimes that can be difficult to do because the price you pay is high. The price you pay emotionally, the price you pay in your day-to-day work environment can be very difficult because of that, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be willing to go through that to get to the other side. And some are not willing to do that. Some are willing to do that. But notice when it's a large group doing it, it's no one person that needs to go through that because the group is doing it, not an individual.
Not individually. So.
And it's much safer with the group than an individual. But if enough groups do it, eventually the culture changes and individuals can do it much more easily. So it really is a shift in culture. And unfortunately, like in anything, if one country does it, then another country can bring that out, can make that happen. There's always got to be that person that starts it, that organization that starts it, or that country that starts it, that gives permission for others to try it.
It's a fascinating topic. We can talk about this for days.
Right.
Let's shift to...
with lots of different opinions, lots of different opinions out there. Yeah.
And sometimes we ask ourselves why... when is the time where United States of America a woman president? So let's see.
Many of us have been asking that question for a while. Yes.
And even here in Sweden, we had the first woman prime minister. When was that? A couple of years ago, I think 4 or 5 years ago. She was appointed because her predecessor, he gave up. So he resigned and she was the first one in line within the Socialist Party. So, yeah. But I must give her credit. She was really good. Yeah. Excellent.
Congratulations to her.
Yeah. And I think maybe the reference for all the women out there, if one day they want to become president, maybe Margaret Thatcher.
It's we're back into when elevating the culture.
Yeah.
Elevating the culture to accept that we want the best of whatever. Who is the best, period.
Yeah. Let's talk about coaching the next generation of leaders. You work with leaders across generations, what qualities stand out to you in a younger generation of leaders?
The next generation of leaders, the exciting thing as I see is there is an expectation that people just accept the fact that they're good. They haven't had to fight in the same way that my generation or the generation after me has been fighting. So there is just this, these 20 somethings of, but I'm good. Yes, I know. That's wonderful that you know that. And you say that with such innocence, and that the whole world will see this. And there is an expectation that their qualities will be seen. There's an expectation that the value will be seen. And for other previous generations, there wasn't that expectation. There was an awareness that it wasn't going to be seen. So the innocence, I think that more and more come in with that, there is going to be less and less tolerance. There is going to be less expectation. There's also much more, and I find this wonderfully intriguing. There's much more of an expectation of balance in life. There's an expectation of a balance in work life. There's an expectation. Many men now in their 30s and 40s are much more actively participating in childbearing. They're much more actively participating in taking care of the home. And when that's their expectation of how they're living their lives, it's how they as entrepreneurs are running their companies. There's an expectation that the dads are going to take time off when they have a new baby. So that they're coming in with a very different expectation of what work life looks like. They're coming in with a very different, and they're evolving. They're opening up in their industries. They're expanding their industries in a way that has a very different value system. And I have hope. Obviously, there are some that are buying into the old system, the old way of doing things, but there are more and more that are coming in with a very different expectation of what life should look like and what life balance should be. So to me, as I see it, as I look at my nephew who was working in an industry and on nights and weekends began his own social media website development company, and eventually was making as much money in his part-time beginning organization as he was working for somebody else, and then took a risk. And now he has a multi-million-dollar organization with many, many employees, and very much has never missed a child's game, unless he's traveling. And he doesn't travel a great deal because he wants to be home to be part of his children's lives. And so there's this whole new, and that's the way his employees are. His partner is doing the same thing. His business partner is doing the same thing with his family. So as I watch them and see many of the folks that I've met through them, this is the value system they're bringing into their organizations, which is not something we would have seen 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting to me that there is a shift. They've seen how this 24/7 expectation of being in control and in charge of everything hasn't worked. Those folks are on their third or fourth marriage. Frequently, the kids aren't talking to them, and their health isn't the best.
Yeah.
And they're noticing that, and they don't want that lifestyle.
No. When monitoring someone afraid of failure, how do you guide them? How is coaching someone in corporate different from guiding someone building a legacy?
Why does failure define you? Why is failure so horrific? And I point out literally so many of us that have formed many companies, so many of us who have made great success have failed, have had a company go bankrupt, or had a company have huge amounts of money and then lose because the market shifted, something changed. And then you simply come back again. To go into the naivete that success just keeps growing, that success isn't this, is a very naive perspective. So it's really doing a reality check. When you're terrified of failure, you never take a risk. And when you don't take risks, you don't grow. And you will continue to shrink in impact and influence and as an individual. And your company will pay the price. That when you're frightened of failure, you don't have the opportunity to fly. and bring concrete examples. I can talk in esoteric ways. I can talk in theoretical ways all the time. But to me, it's also really important. Let's bring in pragmatic examples. Let's bring in an understanding and look at failure is it just means it didn't work. What did you learn from it? And where are you willing to go next? Because you learn as much from failure, even more so sometimes than you do from success.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they don't have to go through it alone. That's a biggie. You don't have to go through risk and possible failure alone. Others are going to be there with you.
Let's talk about the role of vision in leadership. A clear vision can make leadership. Why it is so critical for a leader?
To have a vision? Where are you going to go without it? The vision, having a vision for yourself, as well as a business for your company, whether it's your personal company or you're working for a larger organization. Having a vision for the company and for yourself gives you something to work towards. When we don't have something we're working towards, we are in survival. We are in complacency. And when you're in survival mode or in complacency, I can guarantee you will reach a place of stagnation. And when you hit a place of stagnation, depression shows up, survival becomes a way of life, your creativity becomes less and less, your willingness to grow becomes less and less. And eventually you see the world pass you by because life continues to evolve. And when you do safety and complacency, you pay a high price.
Yeah.
A very high price.
And how do you help leaders turn a vision into actionable steps?
Let's look at what that vision is. Let's look at where it's going to take you and your company. Because you can have this expanded vision, unless you become somebody who can live that expanded vision, it's not going to work. So you've got to grow as your vision grows. And so let's look at where you are, where your vision is at the moment, where you want the vision to go, and who you need to become in the process of taking it there. And now that we can see the bigger vision, and I think that's important, see the bigger vision first, see the person you need to be to live that vision. And now you can realize you're not where you need to be, and your company or your life is not where you want it to be. So let's look at the steps you need to go through and the steps the company needs to go through or your life needs to go through to achieve that. I mean, it can be as simplistic as I want to buy a house. It could be I want to take my company from 10 million to 100 million, from 100 million to $1 billion. It doesn't matter what it is. Let's take it simple. I want to buy a house. All right, you can sit here and want to buy a house for the next 40 years. What are you doing to buy that house? Let's talk about the doing, because vision is lovely, but without action, it's just a concept.
Pointless.
So what do you need to do to make that happen? How much money are you willing to put away every week to get a solid foundation? Or how much money are you willing to borrow to get a foundation, to get a deposit to put on that house? What are you willing to do? And so that becomes a big question. What are you willing to do to achieve that? What are you willing to do to become that person? What are the steps we need to take to help you get there? And when people begin to see that it's possible with pragmatic steps in their own personal growth, as well as pragmatic steps in the shifts they need to make within the company and themselves, and then steps they need to take to make that happen. We've got 3 different avenues here: for myself, for the shifts that are needed, and then for the steps to get there. And when they can see pragmatic steps, there's hope. I think wishing is lovely, but wishing is empty. When there's hope, it's because you have pragmatic steps that you can see yourself taking.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Legacy is a word that holds different meanings for different people. What does it mean to you, Dorothy?
To me, the legacy is, again, it can have 2 different things. The people I'm working with, I actually have to have 2 clients right now that their whole focus is creating a legacy. For me, they've been highly successful. One has been highly successful in her industry. She was working with $1 billion industry. And then she now wants to take all the expertise she developed there and do training programs for women over 60 in wealth management and wealth development. And she wants to know that when she leaves this planet, she has taught many, many others how to do what she's learned how to do. You know, for another woman, 2 people in her family have committed suicide in the past 10 years. And what she wants to do, she was highly successful in multiple level marketing. But what she wants to do now is her legacy is work with the 20, 30 somethings and teach them about having a vision, about having a purpose, about having meaning in their life. She's not working against suicide directly, but she's working against it in the belief that by teaching the upcoming generation, that having a vision, having a purpose, having meaning in your life makes you want to wake up every day, makes you want to succeed at something, makes you want to have an impact, have influence, and make this world a better place. And so her legacy, in her mind's eye, is minimizing the desire to leave this planet, giving people a reason to want to be here, to want to succeed, to want to be alive, to want to bring joy to themselves as well as the people in their world, right? So for each of them, legacy is having greater impact and influence in some way. For myself, a legacy is, how do I want to make this world a better place? And what am I hoping will happen when I leave? You know, I had a school for 19 years teaching a method of energy medicine I created. And I know that for every physician that went through my program in the 4-year program I created, they impacted thousands of people over the course of their career.
Wow.
For every physical therapist who went through my program, they impacted thousands. So nobody needs to know my name, but I know my work has impacted tens of thousands of people through the people I trained, right? And I trained thousands. So if all of those impacted thousands, we're not talking, many millions of people have been impacted by work I created. To me, that's quite a legacy to think that I've impacted the healthcare indirectly of all of those people. And each of those people I trained had the ability to train many more. So that, to me, that's a legacy, is making this world a better place.
And on that, Dorothy, for leaders building something bigger than themselves, how do you guide them? What's the one piece of advice you'd leave our listeners about leading with purpose?
When we lead with purpose, we give everybody we impact the ability to lead with their purpose. Leaders are role models. Whether they choose that consciously or not, leaders are role models. And if, as a leader, I am leading with purpose, people experience my integrity. They experience my passion. They experience my clarity of purpose. And they see me living it. And I call them to do the same. I, as a leader, am helping to make this world a better place, not simply because of me, but because of all the people out there that have seen me and now have permission to take that risk, to live their purpose, to claim their passion and their vibrancy and to go for it. And so, yes, I'm living mine to the fullest. But when you are a leader, what never ceases to amaze me is no matter where I go that has a big group, a great number of folks there, somebody will come up to me and say, I heard you speak 18 years ago. You gave me permission. There might have been 600 people in that audience, but they will come up and say to me, I heard you speak. You gave me permission to go do this. And this is the impact it had. Every leader has the ability to have an impact far greater than they imagined. And so when we own that, leadership, and again, I believe every one of us is called to leadership. Leadership gives us the opportunity or the responsibility, however you choose to see that, to impact far beyond we imagined. The number of people over the course of your career with this podcast, how many people have heard something you said or somebody, a guest said, and then told a friend who told a friend who told a friend?
Yeah.
And then who told their child, perhaps? What is the impact? And you will never know the extent of the impact because you chose to be a leader in doing this and in bringing other leaders out. Your impact is massive without even knowing the full extent of it.
Full extent, yeah.
If we walked around every day knowing that, imagine how much we would be called to stand up taller. Right?
Yeah.
How much more we would recognize the impact of everything we said, everything we did. And I don't mean that as a burden. I mean that as a gift of freedom and delight at the impact, the influence we have in the world by choosing to be truly real in who we are, authentic in who we are.
Yeah.
Without limit.
Right. Great. Now it's time for our fun part, which is the lightning round. You ready for a speedy Q&A?
I'm as ready as I'm going to be, so go ahead.
Fantastic. What's your favorite book on leadership?
Oh, golly. What's your why? Following your why with Simon Sinek. What is your why? Why are you doing what you're doing? That's such an important question.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who is someone living or dead you would love to have a dinner with?
Oh my God, there are so many. There are so many. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Ruth Ginsburg is certainly one that I would love to. A small, powerful woman who lived her belief systems enormously. Definitely, Christ, who created a millennium-long movement, many millennium movement. Of bringing unconditional love to the world, a belief of leaving the world of legal law and enforcing and coming instead from a place of unconditional love. I'd love to have a conversation with Christ. Yeah.
Great.
Powerful people who have made a big difference in the world because they were willing to stand up and be who they are.
Yeah. What's one habit you can't live without?
Oh my God. Reaching out and supporting friends, sending them a message of love in the morning. Yeah.
Great. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
A morning person or a night owl?
Both. I love life. So I'm up at 6 in the morning or 5 in the morning. And I may take a few minutes to meditate and get caught up with myself. And I'm another day of life. But then I start out and I'm ready to roll. And then in the evening, I know it's time for bed and I go because I know my body needs it. But I can think of 42 more things I want to do, and just so it's a discipline.
Yeah.
To go to sleep. Yeah.
What's the worst career advice you ever gotten?
The worst advice I've ever gotten?
Yeah, career advice.
Career advice. Golly, don't reach out. Don't take any risks. Play it safe.
Meaning, don't even think about change or
Right. No, when my first as a big adult, if you will, was being a therapist, seeing 42 patients a week, a very, very good income. People said, you're making really good money. You have a huge reputation. You've got a long waiting list. Don't plan on anything else. Don't do anything else. You made it. Don't change anything because you could lose this. If I never changed anything, I wouldn't be the woman I am. I wouldn't have had this amazing life I've lived. I wouldn't have formed 5 companies. I wouldn't have impacted the millions of people that I've impacted indirectly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wouldn't have had the stories I can tell and the stories I won't tell
Mm-hmm.
um, in my life. I wouldn't have the richness. And I'm not talking monies. I wouldn't have the richness
Yeah.
I have in my life now.
And I will add to
Yeah.
that. Let me just elaborate more, and I will ask you a different question. What's a failure for which you're most grateful?
I Golly, there's been many failures, but what's the one I'm most grateful for? Um, I guess, in all honesty, when I married for life, and I was divorced after 15 years, and I knew the best thing I did for me was leave that marriage.
Mm-hmm.
It was destroying me, and it would have destroyed my children. And by leaving an extremely unhealthy situation, I've done things I never could have done if I stayed married. And um, I wish that had lasted forever. I wish that had been different and lasted
Yeah.
forever. And yet it didn't. And the gift of it is that because it didn't last and I had to support my children, I was called to get my master's and then get my PhD, then expand this company, then develop more companies, then to offer my children the ability to go to 2 of the best colleges in the country, to give them a life that they could then take off and fly, however they chose to do that. And they've done it in very, very different ways, but they're both absolutely loving the journeys they've created. And I have had a life I never, ever would have had if I had stayed married.
Yeah.
So it's recognizing a failure that I did not want to see, and taking a risk of leaving what I knew wasn't working and what would destroy me, and coming out into something that became so much richer. You know, we all have failures in our careers, and we've had different relationships that didn't work out. We've had different things in our journey, and we may have wished things went differently in some ways, and yet things happened the way they happened, and we could come through them and become more, or come through them and live in regret and shrink. The choice becomes ours, and how will we live with the failures that take place in our lives? And will we focus on the failure or on the opportunity that we were given after that took place? That's up to us. We can grow from those, or we can shrink and become bitter and angry. The choice is ours. But failure is part of the journey.
It is. It is. Yeah.
It is, you know.
If you could master one skill instantly, what would it be?
The ability to not let disappointments impact me. You know?
Yeah.
And it sounds like a contradiction, but when a client yesterday said to me, "I'm disappointed in you. I had hoped you would take this trip and this trip and this trip with me and do all of these different things." And I said, "I just took one trip with you somewhere, and then I took another trip with you. And all of these trips weren't even part of the contract, but I did this. And I have other clients I need to deal with, other clients I need to work with, other things I need to do in my own personal life." And the fact that she was disappointed in me, I felt badly. And not for a day, not for, ever. But it's like, oh, I feel so bad. I wished I didn't disappoint her. When I took time and could step aside, I could say, the disappointment, how can I use this to best serve myself and best serve her? What can I do with this? And it takes a moment to come back and do that. But there's a part of me that would never want to disappoint a soul in any way, at any time. even though my higher self, my smarter, my emotionally intelligent self knows that some of the best choices we make disappoint people.
Yeah.
And it helps them grow, and it helps us grow.
Yeah.
And I wish joy for everyone. And when I can see a decision disappoints them, and I have a distance from it, I realize that was a gift I gave them. The gift I gave them was to let her go and succeed on her own. Because if I went with her, she would have felt she succeeded because I was there.
Yeah.
And I want her to know that she can succeed on her own. She doesn't need me there. She can call me at any moment, but she doesn't need me with her for her to succeed. Right? And I know that, but I also don't like to disappoint.
Yeah.
So it's, there's welcome to humanity, and it's accepting our humanity.
Yeah.
It's accepting that
it's a fine
we have
balance.
to.
It's a fine
Yeah,
balance.
it is a fine balance.
Yeah.
That disappointing her really is the gift I'm giving her, because she can now go and attend this event and fly on her own and know she doesn't need me in order to fly. But at the same time, this is our stuff. We have, and this is the difference. We need to own our stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so when you have these kind of situations, what's your favorite way to recharge, let's say after a tough day?
There's many different ways. I, in that situation, called a girlfriend and said, all right, I failed. I disappointed somebody. And she's so lovingly, because she knows me so well, says, you're right. You've never succeeded in anything in your life. You disappoint everybody. You'll never be good for anything. And then I start laughing because I know darn well she's being facetious. And it's like, okay, sweetie, thanks for putting it in perspective. All right there. That just like that. There wasn't 2 hours of you poor little thing. There was like, oh, grow up and get over yourself. Darn well.
And move on.
Yeah, move on. And can do it just like that, because somebody loves you so much, they see you.
Yes.
And they can just say, okay, yeah, you're being ridiculous now. Let's get over that, and put it in perspective. And so, but that's the gift, is having the humility to reach out to somebody who loves you and say, I'm a failure. And they'll say, yeah, I know, and then you can laugh about it together. And at other times, I will go in and put on Mamma Mia. I love that movie, Mamma Mia.
Okay.
And the very first song, and I'm
wait a second, Dorothy. You love the movie or the song or both?
all of it. All of it goes together. It's one big package, even though ABBA didn't intend that. It's one big package of the music and the movie. And I put that on, and I am just, my wild, outrageous self is back.
Yeah.
And
it cheers you up.
It just picks me right up. I mean, just even the intro, the song of the intro, when they're coming down the boardwalk, I'm ready to go. And my mood has shifted. Everything has shifted, so we can't, my belief is we can't rely on one other person to save us, to rescue us. But maybe my girlfriend wasn't going to be available. Other friends would not have known me as long or as intimately. They would not have just said to me, yep, you're right. You're an absolute failure. You've never done anything right in your life. And say, hey, wait a minute there, and she can do that and make me laugh. But at other times, then Mamma Mia is just perfect. The music and the storyline, it's just, it's filled with love and passion and vibrancy and outrageousness, and that does it. So I guess it just, even listening to myself speak, when I need support, outrageousness picks me right up. So there's a very wild, outrageous side to my personality, and tapping into that puts everything in perspective. Yeah.
Here we go. For our listeners, the best advice to cheer you up: watch Mamma Mia.
Know what you need. Know yourself so well.
Absolutely.
You know what you need to do that.
Fantastic. Which leader, past or present, do you admire the most?
Oh, goodness. Certainly the Dalai Lama. Very much so. Golly, there are so many, but I would say the Dalai Lama, because he could be so pragmatic and yet so detached and spiritual at the same time. Golly, President Obama, very much so, and his wife,
Michelle.
very much so.
Mhm.
Yeah, Michelle, very much so. Two really powerful leaders who had the audacity to be who they are. Imperfect, wonderful human beings with a huge vision. The two people that I really admire, and in individuals, strong, powerful individuals, and yet as a team, even more powerful and more strong. And supportive, and really empathic. And no relationship is perfect, but they chose to be a team and they stayed that way. So I highly admire the two of them as individuals and as a powerful team. Yeah.
Good. If you weren't coaching, what would you be doing?
The next step in my journey, I'll probably, I would love to work with 3 or 4 people or more, to help make this world a better place, create a movement, create change the culture, bring change to the world, and not to New England, not to America, but to the world. How do we teach the world that we are all in this together? That this is very much a journey of purpose and meaning and passion. And we've all got to support each other, not carry, but support each other, becoming everything we're capable of being. I'm one of those professional optimists that believe there's that possibility that this world can be one in which we are all here to support each other grow. And that's what I'm working towards. And that's what I would love to do, is be involved in a movement of change, cultural change, in so many different ways.
Yeah. And lastly, one piece of good advice for our listeners on any topic.
Leadership. Recognize the fact that no matter who you are a leader. And that when you are caught in your story, you don't show up. So be an effective leader with enough emotional intelligence to recognize the stories you tell yourself, because those stories always keep you limited. Live without limits. Live without constraint. Because I truly believe we're intrinsically holy, wonderful people. And when we go into fear and defense is when we become obnoxious, when we become egotistical, when we become violent, when we become caught in the story of better than and the other. There is no other.
Yeah, fantastic.
It's only us. Yeah.
Dr. Dorothy Martin-Neville, thank you very much. Having you on the show has been an honor.
Thank you. It has been a joy to be here with you. Thank you for sharing it with me.
Before we wrap up, can you tell our listeners where they can contact you, learn more about your work, or connect with you online?
Certainly. My website is askdrdorothy.com, ASKDRDOROTHY, or drop me an email, dorothy@askdrdorothy.com. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook and Pinterest and all those places. So they can reach me through any of them.
Yeah. Great.
All right.
So thank you very much for sharing your journey with us and your insights. And to our listeners, I leave you with some words from Simon Sinek. Leadership is not about being in charge. It is about taking care of those in charge. Thank you for tuning in to the PreZero Sports Talk podcast. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to our show. Until next time, stay curious and engaged. Bye-bye.